I'm actually on site right now in Savannah, Georgia, at some townhouses that we're building, and I have my operations team is in town. So you've got Marty, you got Abby, you've got Matt. There are asset managers and project directors of project management. You got Matt Carlin over there and Nick Burton, who you guys are all intimately familiar with as well. And we're going to walk a couple of units and just kind of talk a little bit about this project and give you some background and some learning lessons and things through the many developments and new construction and heavy value add stuff that we've learned and done over the past 15 years of being in this business. And so we'll start out for about 30 minutes there, and then I'm going to bring on my friends Jennifer and Jeremy Perkins, who are developers out of Tennessee and builders out of Tennessee. They do a lot of custom builds. They build self-storage facilities and other asset classes. And so they got a lot of great insights. They're going to talk about the construction process and kind of step by step and kind of go through some of the learning things that they've learned over the years as well. And so they'll go from about 10:30 to 11 Eastern time. And then Fadi is going to hop on and run a Q&A panel with several other folks in Legacy Family, our mastermind, including Christopher Rauch, who's a developer of apartments, of self-storage facilities, and he builds a lot of triple net lease stuff out of Ohio and West Virginia. Who else going to be on? Josh Dixon, who's another developer out of Tennessee and has done a bunch of stuff on heavy value add apartments and things along those lines. And then we also have Chris Lamb, who's developing his first development of single family homes. I think he's got about a dozen or 20 single family homes, a couple dozen single family homes that he's building in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida. And so I think it's good to hear some of the newer experience and lessons learned along as well as like people who are further along down the road. And then Chris Litzler, who's our commercial mortgage broker, will be on that panel as well, talking about I'm sure we'll pepper him with some questions about the financing side of what does construction look like. Like that's a lot of that has changed because a lot of the developments aren't being able to refinance banks out of their loans, out of the construction loans, because they got the loans a couple of years ago and the properties they didn't expect rates to go up as much as they did, and because of that they can't refinance, and because the loans are coming at a lower loan to value. And so now banks don't have as much liquidity as they did because people aren't refinancing. And it's seen as, hey, we wanted to give a bunch of new construction loans, but we can't right now because we have too much new construction on our books. And it's seen as like not a riskier, but a bigger liability potential because of that. So Chris Liss is going to be updating us a little bit about the financing side of things and what that looks like. So let's dive in. I am in Savannah, Georgia right now with my team, and we're building 82 townhouses. So you can see around all down there, these are all our townhomes that are being built. We got guys pouring concrete way down there. The trim guys just showed up, so they're doing a little bit of work. We got some plumbers over there as well. And behind me, I'm going to walk one of these units for you so you get to see. It said these should be done in the next week. And then I got a couple other buildings over there that are all completed. People moved in. And this is a development of about 300 to 400 townhouses. And we own about, like I said, 82 of them. We're going to have 82 of them. So this is something where all the roads were in, all the infrastructure was in. We just bought the lots, and then we're developing the townhouses and going vertical with these townhomes. That was nice because we didn't have to go through all the zoning. It was nice because we didn't have to go through all the approvals and permitting and the horizontal improvements of the development. We're just handling the vertical improvements of building these homes. And this is a topic that construction's always over timelines. It's always over budget, and there are tweaks and there are things that one, you got to make sure that your mindset is squared for it. And be able to deal with a lot of subs and contractors and cities and inspectors and all these other bureaucracies that come with it. And there's nuances and tweaks of running those, not just on the political side of getting all the permittings and plans and stuff, but managing people. That's a very, very intense people management, planning, organizational type of a business. And so if you're not organized, this is probably not the business for you. So These are build to rents, and we're building them and we're keeping all of them, and we're going to run it as a multifamily property. What's beautiful is that they are independently zoned, so I could, or independently parceled, so I can actually sell them off individually and have the benefits of single family. You know, assuming values are higher for an owner occupant to buy it versus an investor to buy it, we can actually get a higher price point for these. So it's a little bit of the best of both worlds, both single family and multifamily real estate, because it's easy to manage, but at the same time, again, we have the potential to sell to both an investor or an owner occupant. The one thing that I would say is I would not do fractional development of like owning a fraction of the HOA, right? Like it's, or fractured is what it's technically called. A fractured HOA is where you don't own 100% of it, and it severely limits your ability to get financing. There's really only a couple lenders that will do fractured HOA and lending on fractured HOA, and because of that, they charge a premium on rates, and their LTVs are a little bit lower, and so we're in a good spot with these. We were able to buy the land for all 82 lots. You know, water, sewer, all that stuff is already to the properties for about $2 million, and so we bought. So what is that? About $25,000 per unit for the dirt itself. And then it costs us about hey, what's the all-in costs on these things? No, it's 105 each. Yeah, so it's about $80 a square foot that we're building these things for. And I'm going to show you exactly what the finishes look like, because they're about 1,000 square feet. They're all 2-bed, 2-bath townhouses, and so we're in for about $80,000 to build it, each unit, and $25,000 for the land. So we're all in for 105, but that does not include carrying costs. So our holding costs, carrying costs, this project's a little bit over timeline, and so we've had heavier carrying costs than we expected. But the market's also been in our favor, and the rents are far higher than what we had hoped. So we thought we'd get about $1,100 a month in rent for these, and that, you know, when looking at it, meets that 1% rule, meaning the monthly rent is at least 1% or greater, or right around 1% of the all-in price. So we would have been all in for around 105, and then with the carrying cost, let's call it another 10, 15, I don't know, let's call it $20,000 a door, right? Let's say I'm into these for 125 a door, but I got new product in a growing area that's easy to rent, and the rents jumped up over the course of the construction to $1,500 a unit that we're achieving right now. So, and our expense ratio is very low, right? Property taxes in the South are typically substantially less than up north. Insurance over here, we're a little bit inland from the coast, so we don't have as tough of a time with insurance, but it's still, insurance rates have gone up, and that's across the board anywhere that you are in the country. Taxes, insurance, utilities are all separately metered, so every tenant pays for all of their own utilities. We don't have to worry about any of the utilities. There are HOA dues that we are taking on, though, but that also helps with some of the exterior maintenance and the construction, or I'm sorry, the exterior insurance. And if the roof goes bad, like the HOA then handles a lot of that stuff. So that's going to reduce our ongoing maintenance then. And then management, we have one property manager because we own another 83 townhouses about a mile down the road, and then these 82 townhomes that we're building. So we have 165 townhomes. The other 83 are fully leased with a wait list, and we're pushing everybody over here. Those were built about 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago, and so all those as units come up over there, because they're a little bit older, I think those rent for about $1,400 a month. These rent for $1,500, and as we continue to develop, the price point will continue to go up, because it'll probably pop to about $1,550, $1,575 by the time we're done with the final ones over the next few months. And so that gives you a little bit of the economics on it. The total expense ratio, I would say, is it's right around 30%, which is pretty good, right? My value add apartments are typically at 40 to 50% expense ratio. So if you bring in $1 million in income, about 40 to 50% of that is going towards expenses on operating expenses, not including your debt service or investor payments or anything like that. And so that gives you a little bit of the economics of it. And the reason we build these is because they're simple, right? It's not vertical. It's just, it's all one story, and we'll take a walk through. These are nice because it feels like a home, and people can drive up right in their own driveways and park their car, take the groceries right in. So they're very attractive versus like a garden style apartment, and very easy to lease up. So there's a ton of demand on these things. It's a little bit, yeah, you guys see just fine. So this has vaulted ceilings. Talk to the contractor. That's supposed to be on a drop down pole. It's typical, right? That's why we do walkthroughs and make sure everything's buttoned up. But we have vaulted ceilings, probably about 15-foot ceilings in here. We have luxury vinyl plank on the floors. Easy to install, wears really well, and it hardens the property. What I mean by that is we don't put carpet even in any of the bedrooms because carpet holds dirt, carpet holds bugs, carpet needs to be replaced far more often, and it takes longer to clean rather than coming in here and sweeping it and mopping it and being done in 30 minutes. Carpet needs to be, professional carpet cleaner, and then you can't walk on it for a day and all that other stuff. So this is bedrooms. Kind of see in here. It has a regular size closet, special, that attaches to the full bathroom here, obviously out here, and then this full bath is also accessible to the any guests and stuff. So simple. Little dining light over here is actually a little bit too close to the door. We need to move that back. Let me take you through this. Here's the master. Has oversized closet, a little bit of a walk-in closet. Good size master. There's plenty of space in here for both a bed, a dresser, maybe even a little bit of a seating area. And then it's a little bit dark in here, but granite countertops in the bathrooms. And we just have tub surrounds. We didn't tile it. It's just simple, right? We use the same color, the same finishes, the same flooring, the same cabinets, the same countertops in every single unit. You don't know which one you're in because they all look exactly the same. We have stainless steel appliances, everything. We have granite countertops because, again, it hardens the property, gives them a level of elegance. The other thing is it's not that much countertop, right? Like we're talking about, I don't know, 15 square feet of total countertop. And so it's not that expensive to put this in versus laminate or something like that, where it might be, I don't even know. If laminate costs $150 for a piece of laminate, or actually probably need two of them, right? So you're looking at $300 of laminate plus the install. That's the labor's still there. So you're really only spending a couple more bucks on this. I think this is like $30 a square foot or something like that is what we pay. And if we have 15 square feet, we're talking about $450 instead of $300, but now we have granite instead. We'll have to get a nicer sink, and there's a couple other expenses, but we're talking about a nominal number of a few $100s of delta of going laminate versus granite, and it hardens the property. It'll last forever and looks nicer. It attracts better tenants and maintains better tenants. We also have laundry hookups in here. This is big for people who stay. We found that if you install laundry in your units, both apartments and really any of our rentals, and even single family homes back in the day when I was doing turnkey, the tenants would stay longer if they had washer dryer hookups, and you give them a washer dryer. Maybe you bump up the rent a little bit in order to pay for the washer and dryer, and then they don't leave, because otherwise if they leave, they got to go pay for it. They have to buy their own washer and dryer, or there's no washer dryer hookups or anything like that. And then this is a little bit of the backyard. Obviously, it's not graded and landscaped or anything along those lines yet, but all the tents get a little bit of a pad. This will all be landscaped with grass, and you get a little bit of a privacy fence here as well. So this is one of the community, one of the units that backs up to the community. Our other units actually back up to the woods, and about, I think, a little over half of our units back up to the woods. And so all of them, all these guys, all those guys, all those guys, all of these along that ridge, all back up to the woods. So it's a lot more private. We can charge a premium for something like that. So gives you a little bit of insight. What I'd like to do is talk to my team and ask them a couple key things that they would have known prior to or lessons learned, right? And key things that they wish they would have known, because they're the ones working with the contractors, they're the ones working with the suppliers, they're the ones dealing with the lenders and the draws and the property management and the leasing and all that stuff on a day-to-day basis. So I thought it'd be really cool to interview each of them because they're in the weeds, they're doing the actual work. So, all right, guys. Jasmine, how are you?
Hi,
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Super excited for it. We're live on Facebook and to a training that I'm doing with in front of the whole world. There's 60 people on here, and it's streaming to Facebook, and then it'll go on YouTube and stuff too. So we'll get a couple thousand views. But what I'm doing is I want to ask everybody, like, what's one or two kinds of things that you wish we would have known earlier to keep things on time, to keep things on budget, to make it less headaches, right? I think on time, on budget, less headaches. Those are all things that would be very, very helpful. So, Abby, starting with you. All right. So Abby's one of our directors of project or property management, and she oversees some heavy value add on the existing apartments that we have, and then she's a regional director of property management for our team. And so she has a lot of experience across local properties, state properties across the states, anything along those lines. And she's helping out with these. So what are a couple of things that have been like main pain points or things that you think would have made things easier if we would have known it or had a better expectation set on the beginning on any of the new construction projects or the heavy value add type projects or dealing with tenants, right, on existing or on value add projects, and how that's kind of a little bit of an art and a science that goes with that?
I think the biggest thing is to set expectations, clear expectations with the tenants. Hey, this is going on from this date to this date. And, there's going to be some noise. There's going to be, contractors, trucks, and, we're sorry about this, but the community is going to be better for it. Your unit's going to look, your apartments are going to look nicer. Set that expectation, then follow up with them. How are things going? Because they're on site living, and if they're experiencing problems, then you don't want to wait for them to come to you.
Yep.
You want them to feel that you're involved and that you are worried about their well-being.
Yep.
And the safety and all of that. So I think that's a big thing.
I think that's I would assume that's going to be a recurring theme across a lot of the answers. It's just communication, right? Making sure you set clear expectations with the tenants, with the town, with the subs, with the general contractor, with the property management across the board, making sure expectations are set in a clear way. So that way people aren't surprised, right? Like, it's okay to have a tough conversation as long as people know what's going on. But if you're not having the conversation, they automatically go 100% negative. And they think the worst case scenario, right? So yeah, I think setting expectations and communication is a big piece. So thank you.
Sure.
Marty, what's up, bro?
What's up, man?
Marty has been with me since 2015.
Well, I've known you since probably 2013.
So 2015. Marty, many of you guys have heard the story of my first assistant that I ever hired. It was Marty. Marty is now a regional manager in our a director of regional property management in our management company, and oversees specifically this site, right?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about some learning curves, things that we wish we would have had better expectations on or understanding of, and how we would correct those mistakes moving forward.
So I'd like to kind of piggyback off of what Abby was talking about, just setting proper expectations. Take a look around, right? This construction project, it's an absolutely gorgeous development. We're building 82 two-bed, two-bath townhomes. We've got crews in here knocking units out left and right. But inevitably, there's a couple snags that come along, right? We've got our property manager here, Jasmine, who's done a fantastic job of marketing these units, having great conversations with prospective tenants. So we've got people literally lined up, ready and waiting to move in. But with these construction snags, we've had to, again, set expectations and let people know, like, hey, there's a lot more that goes into this. There's permitting. There's several different types of inspections from the city, from the utility companies. So having those, again, positive expectation setting, communications with these folks, just to let them know, like, hey, I know we talked about maybe a February 1 move-in. We're a couple weeks behind. The same for like February 15, February 21. So again, it's life is all about expectations, right? So same thing here.
Yep, I agree, man. I agree, and I think it's again having the difficult conversation. As long as they know what's going on, and you're having that discussion with them, then they're very accommodating. They're very agreeable. But if they have to chase you down, you never want to be in reaction mode. Like you always want to be proactive in that communication. So that way the tenants know. And there's been some delays where the tenants have had to go and move into another property, and that stinks. But they still respect and appreciate us because we communicate clearly to them.
You and me are working together on this versus, hey, I'll clue you in when you're ready to
go. Yeah. Good stuff, man.
Thanks,
good share.
Guys.
So Mr. Matsuhei has been around since 2013. We've been working together on stuff. So over 10 years. And Matt has run a lot of different roles, but really has fallen into and I think gotten really, really good at the material supplying. And so he's a director of project management with us, really focusing on the materials, supplies, and ensuring. Hang on, there's a big concrete truck coming through. And ensuring, we get the best pricing possible, making sure that things can get delivered in a timely manner. Hold on, y'all. So let's talk a little bit about the material and supply ordering and negotiating pricing and making sure that we have, making sure that the materials are on site when we need it on site, making sure the lead time is there and all those kinds of things. So what are some things that we've learned there?
Yeah, so a big thing on the front end is making sure that, the finishes you want, the material you need, you set that up on the front end with your supplier, make sure that their local warehouses closer to here has that in stock, and maintains that stock for you throughout the course of the project. So that's been a big thing.
Because I mean, there's still supply chain snags, right? Like there's still cabinets are on delay, and I think one of the things I mentioned before is you need a lot of planning. You need to understand when units are going to be coming online and have the timelines in place to make sure that the cabinets have 4 weeks or 8 weeks of lead time, right?
Right. And then that goes in hand with the communication with the on-site team, whether it's a foreman on-site or whoever, multiple vendors, but making sure that you set clear expectations on the front end of how much lead time you need, because there's been instances even in this project itself where you get a call on a Wednesday and they're saying they need material on a Friday for the electricians coming out, and that's been a tough part of making sure that's here when they need it. You don't want a guy showing up, paying him just to stand around.
Looks like we lost Tim. Who I think the Perkins are next on the agenda. So Jennifer and Jeremy, if you guys want to kind of get started, hopefully we'll get Tim back. Jennifer, I want to wish you a happy birthday. The Perkins are valuable members of Legacy Family, and they've got some good stuff going all the time. We see the questions that Jason and Brandon, you asked. If we get Tim back, we'll be sure that he answers those. But right now, let's turn it over to the Perkins.
First of all, thank you for the happy birthday wishes. There's nothing better gift to me than to be around people I know and care about, and sharing the things that we've learned and the mistakes that we've made to help us be better contractors, better builders. And so Tim reached out and asked us to share 5 lessons learned in new construction. And so Jeremy and I put together a list of what we thought were probably the 5 most important things that we would want to share with you guys to help on your journey with new construction. And I think it's helpful for development for big projects, and helpful for just homeowners too, at least the first 4 of them, to do better with new construction. And so the first of those is know your numbers, which we all kind of probably expected. And by know your numbers, it's what I mean is, like Tim was saying, you've got to spend a lot of time up front before you even go to the bank preparing the line items. And even if it's just a general budget in the beginning, you're going to have to dive into each of those segments to really know how much to budget for. and a lot of times, all the time, actually, it's not going to come back exactly where you budgeted. So you've got framing, for instance, and you've reached out to your supplier and you've gotten a quote from them on materials. And so, it's just right? You put it in the budget, you send it to the bank, you order the materials, the framers come and they get 90% done and they don't have enough materials. And now you need more. So how do you mitigate that? Is always ask for more than you need. And a lot of times, and this is a mistake that Jeremy and I made in the beginning, is to only ask for the least amount we thought we would need to get the project done. And you always end up needing more. Then you have to come out of pocket, or you have to go back to the bank, and maybe they have those funds available for you. Maybe they don't. And then what? Right. So I'm mostly in the numbers, dealing in the spreadsheets, dealing with the banks. And so I have a different technique now than we had in the beginning. And that technique is to, first of all, Jeremy and I are primarily building luxury homes, see, custom and spec, which means speculative, to build, expecting it to sell at a certain price, and just under the $1 million price range, like 2,500, 3,500 square foot homes here in Middle Tennessee. And so I'm looking around. I'm a licensed realtor, but I don't sell our properties because I don't have the bandwidth to do this and that. But I'm looking to see what's selling for the highest square foot price. All right, that's what I want to be building right now. And so those comps already exist. And then I'm reverse engineering that deal with the bank to say, okay, this is selling at 200 a foot. That's what I want to build. I know the bank is going to give me a loan to value of 80% or whatever. So that's my budget, right? So maybe I could build that house for, $500,000, but if I can get $650,000, I'm going to put the rest in contingency. And Jeremy, why are we going to do that?
Yeah, just to take care of the unknowns and the different things that happen. You go through, like she mentioned, you get a building package from an engineer, from your building company, and there's so many variables with a framer, which is a great example, to depending on how much waste they have, and we try to control that on site and talk with the framing crews and drywall crews and different people on how to properly utilize the materials that we have by providing them with like cut sheets and telling them exactly what material goes to what, to try to reduce the waste. But inevitably you end up having waste, or the takeoff is not 100% correct from the suppliers. So we always want to have that contingency to make up for some of that stuff and account for it before it happens, and be super conservative in our underwriting, from the beginning. I'll also add that, from knowing your numbers from a historical standpoint, we've really learned that having the right bookkeeper is essential to getting these things right from the beginning. And somebody that knows job cost accounting and construction codes and different things, and how to categorize what the unit pricing is, et cetera. Because on the front end, it's really important to know exactly from a historical standpoint what went where, what your units actually are, and what that means. And so we can try to track and control that from the very beginning. Because when we're talking about knowing our numbers, we're really building this house from start to finish on paper from the beginning, and try to mitigate as many risks as possible from a financial standpoint as we can.
Yeah, so we're spending several weeks up front going through and preparing our, quotes and bids and spreadsheets, and getting that ready before we talk to the bank, before we break ground. And what, like they say, measure twice, cut once. That's your measure phase, where you're going and you're looking and you're reevaluating and making sure the deal makes sense, making sure you have room for errors, that sort of thing. Because, like Tim mentioned, it's always going over the time. It's always going over budget, but eventually you learn to dump as much as possible into contingency, and to I like to really compact the timeline, like what is the fastest we can get it done, but we know there's going to be weather. We know that people aren't going to show up. We know that there's going to be mistakes. And so we know it's going to take much longer, but if everything in the perfect scenario, lined up, it could take this short a time. And so then we forecast that out and let people know, we've got a project that we just pulled the permit on yesterday, and we've got it scheduled out all the way through the end of the job. So cabinets know that they're coming in March. But that's going to be a floating schedule. So that could be March 1st. It could be the end of March. It could be the following month, but they're on the radar. That way they can let us know, hey, it's going to take 4 weeks once we get your order. So that way we know we need to order 4 weeks early. So for instance, we haven't broke ground yet on this property, but we've ordered windows because it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks for them to come in. And we need those ready to be installed after framing is done. So that leads to the second thing. The first was know your numbers. The second is building out systems and schedules. And so when I'm talking about systems, I'm talking about software or systems inside of software. And some of you may use software already. I know in Legacy that they use Monday.com. Or have used Monday.com. We've also used Monday.com. Co-Construct is specifically for new construction, and it'll have like a built out template of, this is how the building process goes and how many days, and you can modify it, and it'll kind of build out a Gantt chart in a floating schedule. So if you have a delay, everybody gets pushed out and they can get like a text or email update. We've used that before, and currently we're using clickup.com. And Jeremy, you want to tell a little bit about why we've migrated into that system?
Yeah, after using several different systems, we really was just taking the pros and cons from each system that worked for us within our specific business. And then we got with the developer and got with ClickUp and an operation manager to just pretty much formulate our own system based around what our needs were, specific to our industry and specific to, how we work together. We're super lean in our business. Jennifer and I do a lot of the work. We're the general contractors. We do a lot of the upfront work. We're the general contractors. We're also the developer. So we really try to get as organized as possible. And that's why we kind of built our own system out with clickup.com. To keep everything in line and in schedule. We go over and review our schedules constantly with our team. We have project management meetings once a week. We have an active constructive meeting with all of our new construction projects or projects period that are going on actively. And then we also have a pre-construction meeting once a week that we review actively every single week on what's coming up and how to plan for the projects that haven't broke ground yet. We also have a weekly accounting meeting. I can't stress enough about the accounting side of it, to know exactly where every dollar and every penny is going in each project. Because if we can mitigate and find mistakes on a weekly basis, then, over time we save a lot of money. That's probably one of the biggest lessons we've learned in construction on the accounting side, is just finding the mistakes before they happen. But yeah, as far as our systems go, we have a schedule set up in the system from a build. We try to stay about 2 weeks ahead of our schedules. Framing's coming up. He knows 2 weeks prior, drywall, electrical, plumbing. Everybody knows 2 weeks prior to the schedule. And then a week ahead, we always, in our active construction meeting, we will confirm the date and or move it as necessary. And that way we keep the project as fluid as possible on a week-to-week basis to try to preserve as much time at the end of the job as possible.
Yeah, and for timelines, there's another element to it when you have a client. So spec is one thing. We're building for ourselves. It's, if we get a delay, we don't have to let anybody know, but our subs and ourselves, and, adjust our schedule accordingly. But when you have a client, they have certain expectations. So there's another level of complication to that. The benefit of having a client is that you have expenses and then you bill them to the client and then you get paid back. So you have that cash flow. You're not waiting till the end of the job. And we'll discuss that a little bit more with the fifth thing that we're going to talk about. But you also have to manage emotions, because a home is for most people their number one asset, right? Like we as investors don't call our primary residence an asset because it's an expense, but for most people that's the greatest asset that they have. And so there's a lot of emotion that goes into that. A lot of people will only ever build one home that they plan to spend the rest of their life in, and so you have to be really delicate with that relationship with that client, and you can only handle so many of those at once, because everyone has a different level of expectations based on if this is the first home they've ever built or the fifth, because you learn a lot through those processes. It's a very unique process.
Yeah, for us, just to add to that, just for us from a cash flow standpoint, while we're talking about schedules and cash flow and those different things, we do like to have a blend of, for us personally in our business, we have a blend of doing custom homes for people because we're on a cost plus. So we make 20% on a custom home and we get that money weekly. So we have a good cash flow of 20% on top of whatever we spend on a weekly basis for a custom home to help us float our speculative projects and our development projects where we might only get paid once every 6 months on a spec house. And then we might only produce cash flow and or have a refi on a development project once every 3 years or so, as we're building out bigger projects. So it's very important for us, although it might be a little bit more pain to deal with a homeowner. The perk is, having that cash flow available to help support our speculative investment projects.
Yeah. And so the third thing that we want to share is the importance of project agreements and a detailed scope of work. So when you first get started, there's so many things going on. I can't tell you how many times in the past did we get somebody started, or even still sometimes someone started and we don't have the signed project agreement in hand. And if you've worked with them and and trust them, it may end up just fine, but it may not, right? And there may be a conversation that was had and wasn't written down, and they heard one thing and you understood another thing, and all of a sudden their project's done and they're asking for payment, but you guys are not on the same page, and then what? You have a ruined relationship, or maybe you end up in court, or maybe you don't get to work together again. And so that's why it's really important to have a very detailed but basic project agreement, right? So you might work with somebody that English is not their first language, and so you need to make sure it's basic enough that they understand what is in that agreement so that you guys are on the same page there. But it's also very detailed to cover all of the expectations. And so when we do a project agreement, and we do it with every single person that's providing labor, right? Because if it's a supplier, we don't need a project agreement. They're going to send us a quote. It details out what they're supplying. They're not providing the labor. But if someone's providing labor and materials, or just labor, we got to have a signed project agreement before they begin work. And in that project agreement, at the top, it's going to say, what the job is, who the primary contractor is, us, the subcontractor, the expected start date, right? Because that's a moving target. And more importantly, how many days is it going to take you to complete it? So if you tell me it's going to take you 14 days to complete it, I expect it to be in 14 days. And some of those, we also have a penalty for going over that, because some people will really abuse that and they'll bounce back and forth between projects. And then you're waiting on them to get done so that you can start the next sub, and your project is significantly behind because you didn't set the expectation of how many days is it going to take you to complete it. All right. And then beneath that, we have the scope of work. So if they're a painter, they need to know what kind of paint are they going to be using on the trim? What kind of paint are they going to be using on the walls? Do they need to sand between finishes? All the different expectations in that scope. And then in the bottom, everyone gets the same little verbiage and blurbs in that section there saying you're responsible for cleaning up your trash. You're responsible for making sure that you don't drag mud out on the roads. You're responsible for providing us with a certificate of insurance, so showing the proper liability limits, workers' compensation or exemption, W-9, so we can send you a 1099 at the end of the year. All that is defaulted there. And so when it comes time that they submit their invoice, well, we've collected their information beforehand, but suppose something fell through the crack and somebody didn't collect a certificate of insurance. They submit an invoice. We've got another stop in place with our bookkeeping system that says, hey, doesn't look like we have a up-to-date certificate of insurance on file. We need that showing that you're covered on the date that we write the check to you. That way, if there's some kind of issue, somebody, you've installed the septic system and it collapses and somebody was injured and there's a lawsuit, I've got proof of your insurance coverage on that date I wrote you the check. We can go back and handle that liability issue there. So that project agreement, the scope and all of those details are super important. And Jeremy, do you want to cover some more details on that?
Yeah, I'll add to that. Something we've learned over time that has really helped speed up the process in the beginning when we're planning a job, and also to help us with our budgets, is opposed to going and getting 3 bids on a certain item for a subcontractor. We found that everybody just shoots high to the moon and tries to get as much as possible. Then you got to negotiate with them and bring them back down. And then you got to pick between 3 people. And that just really drags out the process. So since we've had such good job cost accounting over time, we already know what a fair market value is for different trades. Like we know per square foot on paint, we know per square foot on flooring labor, we know per square foot on framing, per square on roofing, those different things. We've started to do over the years, we've started to do job proposals as opposed to job bids. And we just asked somebody, are you available in this time frame? Are you able to do the job within this time frame? And can you do it for this price? Because that's what we have in the budget. And we're able to find the right subcontractor for the project, a lot faster, and able to hold them accountable to our budget as opposed to whatever they feel like charging that day.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to negotiate. We tell people, hey, can you do it for this? This is what we have in the budget. And they'll turn around always and say, no, I need this much more. And, I'll say, well, I'm sorry, we don't have that in the budget. Let me know if you decide that you can do it for that price. And typically they'll say, yes, I can do it for that price, especially if it's someone we've been working with. But of course, too, we want to be fair too. We understand prices go up, the cost of labor, the cost of materials, all that goes up too. So whenever we're factoring a new job and say, this line item costs $5,000 on the last build, because a lot of times we'll build the same house differently. Like it'll be the same floor plan, but different finishes and like a different sort of aesthetic. We're always rounding up in our budget for the next one because inevitably the cost of something has gone up. And so we need to go ahead and round up. And if we can save, great. But very rarely does the cost of anything ever go down. So,
and I'll add to that we don't want to be the cheapest paying contractor in town either. Like we don't want somebody to come in and just do sloppy work because we're lowballing the crap out of them. Like we do value quality over price from that standpoint, but we also want to make sure that it fits within the project that we're doing. So if we're doing a $5 million house, we're going to want a super high quality contractor doing that house, and we're going to price and make that proposal based on the type of job we're doing. If we're doing a townhome, and we're trying to build at $80 a square foot, as Tim was doing over here, we're probably going to be using a different contractor, and our proposal is probably going to look a little bit different, and our scope of work is going to be a little bit different, even for the same trade. So I just want to make that point that we're keeping all of those things in mind, and we're not just trying to get the cheapest person that we can. It's all job dependent. It's all budget dependent, and result driven on what we're trying to achieve on each project.
Yeah, because if you're hiring the cheapest contractor, you're going to end up paying somebody else to come back and do it right. So I always say you can either do it right the first time or you can do it right the last time. So you got to keep that in mind and make sure that you're sticking with quality contractors and people that know what they're doing and have experience. And one way to know if they have experience is get their certificate of insurance up front before you make any commitment with them, because a lot of times people bid your job and they don't even have a business, right? They're just painting on the side or whatever. And that's fine and great for homeowner projects and that sort of thing. But if you're running a business, you're doing business to business and you're collecting the information that you need to protect yourself and to protect your clients. So that leads me to the fourth thing that we have down is working with specialists versus do it all subcontractors. So Jeremy, you can share quite a bit about this.
Yeah, we really like to, this is a lesson that we've learned, and I'm sure a lot of us here have learned over time, is when someone comes in and says, yeah, I could do the paint, I could do the trim, I could do the hardwood, I could do I can do all these things. You're thinking, man, that's going to save me 5 phone calls and I don't have to worry about it. And then, but really, are they good at all those things? And why are they so available that they could do all these things? And so what we've learned is we really want a specialist in each individual trade. I want a framer that does nothing but frame for builders. And that's what he's good at. He's got a crew that can handle multiple projects. All he knows is framing. He eats, breathes, sleeps framing, and that's it. I want a roofer the same way. I want a painter the same way. Every trade throughout, I want the specialist in that trade. And I want to work directly with the guy that is there on site managing his crew. You get some of these brokers, contractor brokers who have crews that do everything and this and that. And we just had bad experiences when it comes to that. So we're always looking when we're hiring subcontractors for the specialist who specializes in their individual trade and who is also has the staff or the ability to manage their jobs theirself and not be so spread out that you end up having to do their job for them.
Yeah. So yeah, that pretty well covers it for that. Over the course of business and over the years, you're going to work with all kinds of different subs. You're not going to work with just one framer. You're going to have multiple ones for different types of jobs, and then, different scenarios there. So make sure that you have a good Rolodex full of good contacts, and that, very often do I get people saying, oh, let me bid that. I'd love to bid that. And sure, I'll let anybody bid it, because you never know when it's a good opportunity to work with somebody. But a lot of times it's, people trying to do everything, and we really got to focus on what we're good at. Just like I said, I'm a licensed real estate agent, but I don't sell our houses because that's not what I do best. Development, new construction, underwriting, that's what I do best. And so that's where I need to dedicate my time and focus and let other experts in real estate do that part of selling the job. So the last thing, the fifth thing that we have on our top 5 lessons learned in new construction is building custom versus spec. So a custom job is whenever a client wants you to build a house for them, and you come to an agreed budget. If you could do like a not to exceed or like a guaranteed price, or you can do cost plus, which is what we do. We prefer to do because it's transparent. They get to see the receipts. They make changes, and the changes are solely contingent on them. And then we just add our fee on top of that. And so the other option, which we prefer, most people prefer as builders and developers, if you have the bandwidth, the liquidity to carry the projects, is spec. And spec is short for speculative. We are speculating that we're going to sell this project at X amount whenever it's completed, which we call the ARV, or after repair value, when you're in renovating or building. And the difference on the bookkeeping is with custom, that's how you get your cash flow, right? So even if we really prefer to do 100% spec, we have to do custom sometimes because we need that cash flow, because we have bills to pay, right? Even if it's the interest payment on the mortgages for our spec projects, we've got to have money coming in, our ordinary income, our cash flow through our spec building to sustain our wealth building, our portfolio building, which is the capital gains coming in from when we sell a spec or a project. And even on the longer term side is development, right? So we call our custom building or our cash flow fast money. And then we call our spec building medium money, because we're getting that every 6 months or so. And then our development could be 5 years or, 1 to 5 years, something like that, depending on the project and the exit strategy. And that's our slow money. That's your portfolio building, your wealth building there. And so with custom building, you've got the client. It's an additional, headache, if you want to call it that, or if you really love it working with people, then maybe that's where you enjoy your time. But that's going to take more bandwidth, right? Because that's more people to manage, more people to deal with. And then with the spec building, you have a lot more control there. You can control the finishes. You can control, suppose you don't want it to go active in January, because suppose that's not a good month to sell houses. So you can get it more scheduled out towards the spring, that sort of thing. We try to have both going on all the time. So we've got our custom jobs and we have our spec jobs. And Sometimes we're bankable, like where we can work with like the traditional bank and get the best interest rates, but we really work more on velocity instead of being able to get the cheapest price, the cheapest interest rate. So we found over time, like we do continually try to find good relationships with lending partners so that we can provide the most value, provide the most beautiful home at the best price. But inevitably in this business and with development, it's a cash flow game. Right. And so we don't fit in debt to income boxes because they're looking at historical, like, okay, well, here's your income last year or the year before when your tax returns were filed less, but here's what you took on now. So here's your expenses. So we're comparing previous income to today's expenses. And so then you have the problem of the debt to income. How am I going to get financing? And so in that case, there's multiple different avenues. Just because your traditional bank says no doesn't mean that you can't get lending. You can work with hard money lenders, hedge funds, that sort of thing. Private money lenders, you can partner with a friend. We've done that in the past where they've taken out the loan, but we've done all the work. And I'm kind of getting into a different section there where I was really just going to focus on cash flow versus capital gains. But financing is a really big piece of this, right? Probably a lot of people want to get into the construction and development game that don't feel like they can because they haven't figured out the financing piece. So getting that figured out is a big important part of it. And if you've never done it before, I think one of the better ways to get started is partnering with someone who has, because the experienced people may have issue getting enough money to do more projects, and they want to do more projects, and then you don't have the experience, but you've got W-2 or you've got money in the bank, that sort of thing. So you guys could be a good partner team just to get started and then go from there. Jeremy, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just think to reiterate on the cash flow perspective of construction. Again, we've made mistakes by spending too much cash on projects, trying to save interest. And then as the ball turns and money's going out before money's coming in, ran into a cash flow wall in that respect. And I think it goes back to Jennifer's point of getting as much from the bank as you can with your loan to values in the front end and having enough cash flow to run the projects. And then also doing the custom homes, there's times where we're like, we just don't want to deal with the extra layer of a homeowner. We're going to do spec only. But then again, we run into that cash flow wall because if timelines aren't like we projected, the house doesn't sell in the amount of time that we hoped, cash continues to go out to pay interest payments, et cetera. Well, where are we getting this income from? We got to produce consistent cash flow in the construction business. And that's where we found is the easiest way to do it is to do homeowner projects or whatever, projects for other investors, things like that. And really just on that weekly accounting meeting, taking control of that. We've got cash flow charts where we project out what cash is going out, what cash is coming in. And we try to stay a couple months ahead of ourselves in that respect. So we know if we've got to find some liquidity somewhere at a certain point, we're not struggling to do it this week. We know, 4 to 8 weeks ahead, just like we know 4 to 8 weeks ahead on our schedules with our subcontractors and vendors. We also know 4 to 8 weeks ahead on our cash flow scenarios. And we've really worked hard on dialing in where we're at in those scenarios and lining up projects in accordance to how that's going to spend from the front end and not scrambling at the last minute when we realize, more cash is going out than coming in. Construction is an accounting game. It's an accounting and scheduling game. Jennifer and I were talking this morning about, these different points and what we wanted to talk about. And, what we've realized over time is the better our accounting is and the better our scheduling skills are, everything else kind of falls in place. Obviously, we have to maintain relationships with subcontractors and vendors and those kind of people. But over time, you're working with the same people. Those things kind of evolve organically, but always coming back to our accounting and our scheduling being, the way that we win.
Yeah, the boring stuff is really the most important. You know, before I got on this meeting, I was going through our weekly spreadsheet of, we have a very, very competent bookkeeper who does such a good job, thank God, because we have spent years. I mean, I did it for years. We've hired different people, and it really takes someone very knowledgeable and special to be in new construction bookkeeping. And we still have to go through every transaction and make sure it's in the right bucket, because within a couple of weeks, just like we were looking at a cost versus budget on one of the projects, and there was $10,000 in miscellaneous. There's no reason for anything to be in miscellaneous, right? We've got a section for every single thing, for every single project. And so it all should be accounted for accordingly. And so we get in the practice of, if put anything you don't know into the unknown spreadsheet, we'll go through and tell you what that should go into. And that way you get trained and knowledgeable about, you know, exactly, you know, the bookkeeper is not the general contractor. They don't maybe necessarily understand that this miscellaneous looking receipt should go into exterior siding materials. And so we help them understand that so that we can get it accounted for correctly. And the better we are at budgeting, the better we're able to help our clients. Because how many times have you heard of someone hiring a contractor and then at the end of the job, they're mad at the contractor because it's way over budget, way over time, you know, quality expectations weren't met, that sort of thing. So communicate, get your stuff together, you know, and treat your business like a business.
Yep.
So we're kind of at the end of our section here. Drew had asked, when partnering as a newbie in development, what's the best way to approach that experienced partner? What value add do I have for them? And so I would say to that, well, what value do you have, right? I would think maybe you have money, maybe you have a deal opportunity that, you know, for instance, people reach out to me and say, Jennifer, I have this land that I think would be good for self-storage. You know, it's my grandparents' land over here on this busy highway. What do you think about that? Well, here's an opportunity for them to, you know, partner on that deal because they brought an opportunity, or maybe they have money in the bank, or maybe they could sign on the loan, that sort of thing. So it just depends, like, what value do you have to bring to the table? And then how do you put yourself in there? And I know people who have done very well by partnering in contractors and subcontractors as equity on a deal. So the best way to get your contractor to give you the best price is if they own a portion of your deal, right? What better motivation for them to give you the very best price and work as hard as they can if they are going to share some of the profit and they are equity owners in your deal? That's a really excellent way to make a project go really well.
Yeah, I'm looking at a couple of these questions also. Those are great points Jennifer made. I agree with that, especially, you know, partnering with your contractor, as long as they're willing to be transparent, you can see the receipts and all of those things. That's what we do with our partners, and what we do with even the homeowners we build with is keep everything transparent, take the emotion out of it, make it all decision based, based on, you know, the product and the price and then those things. Let's see, looks like Brandon said, where are you storing your materials on site so they're safe? So we keep builder's risk insurance for the safety of our materials on site. We also try not to leave materials on site too early. We try to have our schedules dialed in to where roofing material delivers maybe a day or 2 days before the roofer shows up. That way it's there. We can take inventory and then have him come in and get it off the ground as quick as possible. So we're kind of mitigating those risks within our scheduling process of having it hit the ground as soon as possible, having the subcontractor on site to get it off the ground and in the air. We do keep cameras on site. What's the name of the cameras we use, Jennifer?
I think we have some solar powered cellular ones. I think those are through U-Box. And then we have some that for after we have electric that we can do hotspot. But that helps us know when subs are there. And, you know, we have them in a very obvious place so that when people come, they know they're under camera.
Yeah, if it's at night, the light will turn on automatically. Yeah, and that helps.
Yeah, it's no
Good, good.
secret that way. Because people will, your subs will know what tools and what materials are on site and tell their friends, still while they're there. So there are lots of trustworthy people, but there are lots of untrustworthy people. But we're going to turn it over now. I think the next hour's Q&A, and there's some really knowledgeable people that are going to be available. I'm also going to be available, and I'll stay on the call for the next hour or two. And Jeremy, are you going to be around, or do you have to go?
Yeah, I'll be on.
Okay, so we're going to turn it over.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jeremy. Awesome stuff. I know there's a couple of questions in the chat box. I think you guys hit on most of them, but we'll try to get into some of those in our discussion panel as well. For any of you guys that don't know me, my name is Fadi Boumitri and part of the Legacy Wealth team as well. I am the Chief Investment Officer, and I am going to be the one moderating the next panel. And since I have more questions than we have time for, I'm just going to get straight into it. If we could pin Christopher Rausch, Christopher Litzler, Christopher Lamb, yes, all of the Christophers, Dina Rausch, Josh Dixon, so I can get started with them, please. I see Litzler, there's Chris Lamb, there's Dina. Christopher Rausch is probably hiding somewhere. That's okay. We're going to pull him out anyway.
He's out there, Betty.
I know. I saw his, there he is, but we got to pin him. I don't know if we can pin everybody. I don't know how that works. And then is Josh Dixon on here? I don't see Josh yet. I saw him earlier though. There we go. There's Josh. All right. Excellent. Well, I still don't see Christopher Rausch pinned. There we go. All right, we got it, everybody. Thank you. So let's start with a very brief introduction from each of you. I'll start with the couple, Christopher and Dina, just because ladies first. And then if you could just give me 30 seconds about yourself, who you are, where you operate out of, what your experience is in construction, what you focus on in construction these days, and we'll get started from there.
Sure. Christopher, you want to speak?
I wouldn't even listen to you. I was trying to figure out how to get it unmuted, but what'd you say?
I'll start. He said introduce ourselves. So this is Christopher. We're from Racine, Ohio. We are developers of multiple different asset classes. We focus a lot on storage development and commercial assets. We have several storage developments going on. They're Class A, multi-story, typically some ground, one level. And then we have several Starbucks and Chipotle's being built, Panera Bread. That's kind of a newer venture for us. And I'll let Christopher talk about our background a little bit.
Yeah, how far back you want me to go?
Make it quick, he said, 30 seconds.
Right, like she said, we just focus on commercial development now. We started with single family homes and building custom. Now we don't build custom. We only build for ourselves. We're just developers. And AMGC, we GC our own projects, but like she said, we have seven storage facilities going about 600,000 feet. 3 Starbucks, we got 7 in the pipeline. We have 1 Chipotle going and 2 Panera Breads, and then 1 warehouse. But that's really what we got going on right now.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to move on to Josh Dixon next.
Yeah, Josh Dixon. I'm out of Nashville, Tennessee, is the closest place to tell you. So I grew up in construction, so I was very blue collar. We've kind of progressed over the years, and now we focus on mainly residential, small commercial. So we'll do anything from a custom home to spec homes, small developments of subdivisions, nursing homes, industrial. We'll do some of that, but we mainly focus on restaurants and residential.
Thank you, Josh. Christopher Lamb.
Yeah, hey guys, Chris Lamb. I'm the CIO and co-founder of Southern Legacy Homes. We're a production builder outside of Jacksonville, Florida. We also just dipped our toes into some development recently, which has been a fun learning experience. But yeah, so we're excited to be here and growing like crazy. But yeah, thanks for having us.
And is it single family homes? I want to make sure.
Yeah, single family homes.
Cool. And then Chris Litzler.
I don't build anything, guys. I just arrange money for all the
personal financial statements.
yeah. I just arrange money for all the beautiful stuff that these guys build.
So Chris Litzler, let's start with essentially when it comes to financing in the construction world right now, what does that look like, and what options do people have when they're looking to do development?
Sure. So let's back up for a little bit. So financing for construction is really done by two main sources of money, and that's banks and credit unions, which is kind of one pocket of money, and then the other pocket of money is like institutional debt funds. So banks, credit unions, right, arrange the vast majority of this construction money under, call it $25-30 million. Over that size, you might get some more institutional money. So the private client is predominantly financed by banks and credit unions. What was the? I'm sorry. What is the crux of the question?
What is the atmosphere out there for financing?
Yeah,
on
perfect.
Look like?
I thought that's where I was going. That's why I was going there. So banks and credit unions are under a lot of pressure right now. So what does that mean? That really just means that when they're challenged, then the loans become a little bit less attractive. So less leverage, higher interest rates, more borrower equity required is generally the crux of what's going on in the market right now. The reason for that being that banks made a lot of loans that are on their balance sheet today that are substantially below what they would make those loans at today. So if they had to mark them to market, they would take a loss. They're also not getting the amount of paybacks that they would have anticipated, right? They made construction loans. Those construction loans aren't getting paid off because A, they might be over leveraged, or B, the borrower's got a better rate than they would be able to refinance into. So all of those things aside, banks just don't have the amount of liquidity today that they would have had 2 years ago. So the population of banks that are making construction loans is probably 20% of what it would have been a couple of years ago. So less leverage, higher interest rates, fewer and far between banks and credit unions.
Boy, you're just a ray of sunshine.
There you go.
And that's specifically in the commercial world, right?
Well, it's both, right? I mean, in the residential world, even in the for sale residential market, right? That's mostly banks, right? And so they're undergoing the same challenges across the board.
With that said, Chris Lamb, what are you guys doing for financing on these things right now?
We're not going to banks, I can tell you that. We're having to go hard money, so we've, financing 5-30 loans a year. You're paying 12%, 2 points, little more expensive, but we're pretty used to that. It works within our margins, and we found the convenience factor to be able to get these things closed rather quickly. Couple that with some private investor funds allows us to go in and execute. So it's been helpful.
Now, are you doing that one property at a time, or are you doing kind of a portfolio at a time?
Yeah, so it depends. So the neighborhood that we're developing now was 13 lots, and then we'll do some one-off lots as well. So it just depends on what the appetite of that lender is, and then eventually we'll have our land acquisition fund set up to be able to support purchasing all of the vacant land to be able to funnel into the construction loan. So it just depends on the size of the project, but a little bit of both.
Got it. Josh Dixon, what about you on the commercial side? What are you finding as far as financing? Where are you finding your money these days?
So we try to bring a lot of cash to the table. So a lot of times when we go into a deal, we'll purchase the property. We'll get everything set up and lined up, and then we will go to a bank and we'll secure a loan for that. We try to keep cash on hand, but we'll secure a loan, and we're a general contractor, we can bring it in at 70% of cost when we're building new. So we usually don't have any problems with that on our end, because we are handling it from start to finish. And all of our money that we do borrow comes from banks. We've done one one or two private loans. We've looked into syndications and stuff, but we do all of our money comes directly from small banks. We have long lasting relationships with these guys, and we've always had a good track record. So we've not had any issues as of yet undoing that.
And are you seeing your LTVs come down or your rates go up over the last, well, obviously everybody saw rates go up, but significantly go up over the last couple of years?
Yeah, the rates have went up. I could probably shave a few, half a point or so if I went somewhere else, but they give us really good, like maybe half a point on origination fees. So we're really, really in a good spot with them. The loan to value, man, we try to only choose good deals. So I think if you take the time and you look for good deals and you're willing to say no, you don't have to have a deal, that if you bring the right deal, that everything just falls together. Got it.
Dina and Christopher, what about you guys? Where are you finding success as far as the financial side is concerned?
Yeah, we only do banks. We don't have investors or anything like that, but mostly these are development projects that we do. So most of the time I buy the land, use it as collateral, but where I'm a GC, I'll usually fudge. And it depends on debt coverage, the deal, the appraisal, things like that. It only works like this. But I signed a $12 million loan yesterday, actually, and it's 100% finance. It's just because I'm the GC and I fudge the numbers to get my money back in the first couple draws. But we're not having problems getting financing through banks right now.
So I want to make sure everybody understood.
Liquid too.
I want to make sure everybody understood that, and tell me if I'm right. Essentially, because you're the general contractor, you can put your own, your own spread in there, and so essentially, even though it costs you X, you're charging Y based on being the general contractor, and therefore you're essentially in for no money out of pocket.
Yeah, I mean, where I'm a contractor, they usually won't let me charge a fee or anything like that, but we're building up, like you said, about 70% of what it actually costs. So I'll just increase like the framing, excavating, things like that. Instead of putting a GC fee in, I'll just do that to a certain extent. Sometimes we got to put money in, but we've done 3 loans in the past month, and it's been over 30 million, and we won't have any money. I got a lot of money up front, but I'll have all my money back.
So let's roll into kind of my next area of questioning is when it comes to as you're developing these properties and you're trying to figure out, are you doing everything in-house? Are you subbing everything out? Are you going to multiple different subs? How does that work, Christopher Rausch, since we have 3 of you?
Now, we used to do mostly in-house, but about 6 months ago, we had a pretty big liquidation event. We didn't lose, but we did it intentionally so we could have a lean, mean team. So now we just basically sub everything, but I have superintendents, just high-level people on our team, but we sub everything. But at this point, we kind of know what everything costs, and we have a lot of stuff that follow us around, and that's just kind of what we do now.
And how many bids will you get for any given thing, or do you know these people well enough that you don't really need to bid against other people?
No, most of the time it ends up being the same people. We always get 3 bids on each line item, and we don't. I think Jeremy and Jennifer said it earlier, but we do the same thing. I don't want jack of all trades. We get excavators, we get concrete guys, we get foundation guys, we get steel guys. I want them in and out on a tight schedule. So, but we always get bids, just trust but verify. We always do contracts and things like that. But
yeah, I know Jennifer and Jeremy said something I thought was absolutely critical, and I hope everybody was listening, and that is that accounting and scheduling or organization are the most critical parts of the construction process. I'll argue that's true of any business. If you don't know your numbers, if you're not following that bottom line dollar, if you're not scheduling and organizing properly, I don't care what business you're in, you may be doing all right, but you're not maximizing it, right? So with that said, going back to Josh Dixon, can you tell us a little bit about your process for, getting subs, bidding it out, doing everything in-house? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, so we grew up, we did everything in-house all my life, but as we progressed, I found it's much easier. We try to keep the things in-house, management, accounting, the big things, and then subcontract all the labor specifically to people that only do that task. Now, there's times like if you can get an electrician, plumber, a lot of times you'll have those that will do one or the other, but we try to find electrician, plumbers, HVAC guys. Sometimes you can get that all in one. And then far as when we're close and local to our area, we always give our subs first pick. So we don't usually bid that out, even if it's on our own project. But we keep a good watch on their numbers, and we always we make it a point to ask what their numbers are running beforehand, just to make sure. But when we travel or do anything outside of our local subs realm, we'll get 3 bids on anything.
Got it. And
So,
is that you too? Does 3 bids sound about right to you? Yeah. And do you guys have in-house, Chris, Lamb, or are you guys subbing everything?
Yeah, we're similar to Dixon there. One of the things we try to constantly do is, performance evaluation, make sure that, we're getting the best price point, also continuing to add to that vendor and trade partner relationship, not just get stuck on one person, because you never know, they could go out of business or disappear. So you're just constantly having that rotation of trades coming in. And then, yeah, all of the management positions are in-house, but really just sub out those labor positions.
So when it comes to the construction process, obviously, even if you're using a bank, you have to have a certain amount of funds on hand for getting whatever work done before a bank will give you a draw, generally is the case. Do you guys, anybody have a formula for how much you want to keep on hand at any given time for a project, or how do you make that determination?
10% working capital is usually what they tell me, plus 6 months cash reserves.
So that's to qualify for the loan, right?
Yep.
Now I'm talking about just to keep construction rolling. How do you determine how much you're going to need in addition to that? How much are you going to need to keep construction rolling as things progress?
I personally try to keep a minimum of 2 to 3 months. We generally have more, but even if we don't, we try to keep 2 to 3 months worth of expenses up front. That way, if you have a client that gets behind that 30-day marker of paying or anything of that nature, you don't have to start freaking out and making bad decisions. So I guess if I was going to say a number, 2 to 3 months of expenses is a minimum for us.
Got it. I saw Christopher Roush, you were about to say something too.
Yeah, most of the time, like we're liquid, but like we just try to go with banks that's easy. We try to do smaller banks, and we have relationships with a bunch of them, but we just build a relationship with certain banks where they don't give us trouble getting draws. So it's just, and we do a form like framing, color, or foundation, things like that. If we need a draw, like we can put like 25%, and we'll get 25% of that line item, or 25% of framing, things like that. So we do it that way instead of doing receipts and things. It just gets cumbersome and annoying, honestly. But that's mostly what we do, is try to use like smaller regional banks on construction, because you got to personally guarantee it anyways, and you end up building a rapport and they don't give you any trouble.
Blitzer, what have you seen from your clients other than obviously having liquid cash on hand? What other kinds of things are they doing to keep construction moving? Lines of credits, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, on a ground up construction project, the bank will typically fund the draw direct, right, to the sponsor. On a bridge loan, right, where you buy something that's got some existing cash flow, and you're doing some work as it goes, typically that needs to get paid first and then gets reimbursed by the bank. So yeah, typically, mobilization dollars of the first draw or two on a bridge loan like that. Yeah, and then it's just obviously more liquidity is better, right? So just liquidity solves problems. It's tough. You can't really put any subordinate financing on top of the bank, right? So it's not like you could really put an additional line on top, but raising additional equity out the gate is always a big help.
while I'm on you, Litzler, when it comes to, when it comes to loans products, right? There's products where you can go directly to a permanent loan on the front end. Can you kind of explain the difference between the two?
Sure. So I think the question is kind of like a construction to permanent loan. Like the best example of that is HUD. So if you use HUD to build an apartment project, right, it's a 40-year fixed rate loan, right? So you're gonna build it in the first 2 years, and then it converts into a permanent loan thereafter. Banks have a similar product. You just typically can't fix your interest rate unless you do a forward starting swap. So build something over 18 months or 2 years, whatever, and then it converts to a permanent loan through a forward starting swap. You always want to make sure you have term beyond your construction period to roll into, so you're not dealing with a maturity event without having enough seasoning, right? So for example, you're going to build something in, 12, 18 months, you should probably not have a 18-month bullet, right? You want to make sure that it rolls into a permanent loan on the back, so you're not running into a maturity event. Even if it's not the best pricing, you just want to make sure you have that there on the back.
And does that mean long term, like 5 years, 10 years, or do you mean add another year or two on there?
Yeah, the industry standard would be a 5-year loan with a bank, right? 2 years of construction, and you get 5 years of term on the back. Having said that, though, historically, banks are, the lender for the construction loan is typically not the best lender for the permanent loan, right? Banks make loans for construction where there's some sort of construction and lease up risk. Once that construction risk is off the table or that lease up risk is off the table, typically there's more institutional money that would be better. So you want to have that protection on the back where you're not bumping into a maturity event. But typically, as soon as it's stabilized, you two things: want to A, pull out equity, B, reduce the interest rate, C, get off the recourse. All of those things are typically easier to do with institutional money.
Got it. Thank you. Dina, I haven't asked you a question in a while. When it comes to a deal, when you're looking at a deal, deciding whether or not you want to do that deal, what are the top things that come to mind as far as what you're looking for, what you're looking at, and is there a formula that you apply or anything along those lines?
Construction coincides with any acquisitions in our book anyway. So whether we're going to build it or we're going to buy it existing, it qualifies for our look the same. So we underwrite it, look at the location and the numbers just as we would anything else. So I overanalyze markets for storage specifically. Because I just did operations mostly the past 10 years. I focused on operations of our storage company. And we had an exit that sold a lot of those. So I've spent more time on the development side with Christopher now. So like whenever we're looking at a project to develop, we spend a lot of time looking at the market to make sure that it's going to be a competent, project. So, overall, it's the same, Fadi. It's numbers. In the end, you underwrite it and determine if it's going to be successful.
So for you, I guess, which one is the most important number for you? Is it a cash flow number? Is it an equity upside number? Is it a combination of both?
Yeah, so also things have changed. We used to always be a buy and hold forever company. Like that was our strategy. So cash flow was like king, and we wanted to make sure that, over the long term, we were going to, that obviously it's still important, but now, we also look at value more, especially with these triple net properties. So like these Starbucks, the Chipotle's, Paneras that we're building, if you get financing for those, a lot of times the cash flow is not great initially. I can't really explain, the details right now, but if you were solely looking at cash flow whenever you're building a triple net property, then a lot of times you may pass on it. But if you look at the value creation, you know, with the lease of a 10-year, 15-year lease of a Starbucks. They sell, you know, you look at the cap rate and you know what you're going to be able to sell this property for literally as soon as it's finished with the signed lease. You know, so we pay a lot of attention to the end value after development too.
Got it. Chris Lamb, when it comes to you, is there a specific metric that you're looking for with your ground up constructions, or are you guys, I guess I didn't ask the question, are you guys pre-sold when you do a project like this? You know, do you know exactly who you're selling it to, or are you looking at certain metrics and then selling it on the back end?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. We're obviously, you know, listing it, trying to get it pre-sold, and depending on price point and location, that'll kind of dictate, you know, whether they do or are pre-sold. So some of them do, some of them don't. But you know, we're a build to sell. So our biggest number is our net margin at the end of the day. We've got to hit that 23%, you know, net margin. Then from there, we can kind of back it into, all right, you know, what location is it? What floor plan are we going to put on there? That'll tell us how long it's going to take to build. So we start to really dial in our numbers. But yeah, gross margin really drives our decision making.
And being that you're doing mostly hard money, private money, does it even matter whether you've got it pre-sold or not, or to the lender specifically?
It doesn't. I mean, obviously it gives us peace of mind. But yeah, to them, we're on a 12 to 18 month term, which is plenty enough time to exit. And, you know, if we happen to need more time, then obviously something went wrong. But yeah, they're not really too concerned. They're just underwriting it just like we are. It's a numbers thing for them because major shortage out there, as we all know. So selling houses, you know, shouldn't be difficult, but there's still a, you know, huge demand for it. So that's obviously supporting a lot of that decision making.
Got it. Thanks. I'm going to ask the most important question of the entire thing, and I'm going to start with Josh Dixon. Josh, how the hell do you keep a project on time and on budget?
So two different ways. One, I'm old school, so everything's paper with me. And so when I first went on my own, I was like trying to figure out how to do all this. I just made a spreadsheet on a piece of notebook paper, printed it off. Now, some of my guys, they keep everything on schedule on the computers. They time lapse everything. But I try to just do a lot of due diligence in the beginning. As soon as I see a project, I go ahead and I send out a message to all my guys that's going to be on that project. Hey, this is what's coming down the pipeline. And then we just have a calendar built out to where when it hits a certain point, then we're calling that sub 30 days in advance. Then we're going to have a reminder go out 14 days in advance. And then we're going to double check a week in advance and inform them of any changes or to clarify that they're still on board to be on those. And then also just materials, you know, that's one thing about being liquid and not having to worry about that has helped is we can order materials on the front end. And if we have the place to store them, or make sure, especially during COVID, when you had long lead times, you know, you were ordering windows and stuff before you ever broke ground because, you know, it was 4 to 6 months sometimes on a special order. So I think just being, having a good calendar, a good timeline, having people that don't drop the ball. You know, everybody's going to drop the ball. You're going to have subs that life happens, kids get sick, this, that, and the other. But if they continually drop the ball and you have a conversation with them, it doesn't matter how good they are. At the end of the day, you know, you got to keep on trucking. So finding people that can fill that gap, that are very intentional, they want to do a good job, they're trying to build a good business. And we deal with a lot of our guys that kind of check on things are retired, and we've found that they just have a different work ethic, and it's worked really well for us.
Love that. Christopher, what about you? Christopher Roush, what about you as far as tricks to keep things on time and on budget?
Yeah, we keep spreadsheets and things like that, but a lot of times when we're bidding out projects, like our steel guy, I just did it yesterday. When we closed the loan, I ordered the steel package, but it was pre-negotiated. But what I do to a lot of them, we have a construction timeline, say it's gonna be 12 months, but I want it done in 7. You know, so I give people incentives I give them bonuses, like the steel guys, if they tell me it's gonna be 12 weeks to get it done and they get it done in 8 weeks, I give them a bonus. So I put bonus in their contracts, but if they go past their timelines, a realistic timeline, there's situations where the weather, something you can't help happens, but that's in there also, but they have to pay us a penalty, but it's realistic. But the way we do big bonuses at the end of the project, if whoever's on time will do it like that. But when you're talking 12, 15 million dollar loans, 1 month you're looking at 50, 80, I mean, I don't even know off the top of my head, but in interest alone. So if you go over 4 months, I mean, you can easily give out $100,000 bonus, but it saves you $300,000 plus your renting. So we do that to keep it on budget, but we also, we pre-order materials, and we have superintendents that's on the jobs and checking in and making sure. And if we don't think it's gonna be on time, we're calling the owners or whoever we're working with, telling them send more guys. And you got to stay on top of it, because if you're not on top of it, it'll get behind quick.
Absolutely. I love what you said about, incentivizing them to be ahead of schedule. And then obviously if you can penalize them for being late, that's also a gigantic bonus as well. Do you find it's easy to find the contractors that are willing to put that penalty in there and take the bonus or the I guess the bonus for being ahead of schedule?
Most of them, yeah. I mean, we're realistic with them. We're not unrealistic. And at this point, we know how long things should take. And if you're just dicking around, it takes a lot longer. But we just try to incentivize them to get the project done. And we're calculating like the numbers, trying to incentivize them to do it. But we want to make it large enough so they're motivated to do it.
Sure. One thing that a lot of people don't factor in is if you're 4 months late, obviously you're paying interest. But the other thing you're again, some people don't factor in is opportunity cost, right? You're losing out on 4 months of rent, and you have to factor that in as well, because realistically, that is a real part of the equation. So, with these bonuses and incentives for hitting timelines or hitting them even faster, I think that's one of the big pieces that people forget to factor in is, hey, you also have somebody that not only are they no longer going to be mad at you because they're not getting into whatever property they wanted to get into, but they're paying you to be there. So make sure you're factoring that into your financials when you decide, hey, how much should I pay somebody to be on time bonus or ahead of schedule bonus? Make sure you're factoring that in. Chris Lamb, is there anything on your side as far as, other than what was kind of already said, anything that you do to kind of keep people on time or on budget?
Yeah, so obviously we're back charging. I don't think we penalize yet. So I'm going to ask the team about that when it comes to the trades and vendors. But our superintendents are motivated, so we give them bonus compensation if they get their starts and they get their closing dates. So they're constantly driving that ship and making sure we're on time and on schedule. So we found that to be beneficial.
Got it. Chris Lamb, while I'm with you, from the time you started to today, as far as construction and development is concerned, what are the biggest improvements that you've made?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I actually wrote down all of what Jeremy and Jennifer were saying, because I feel like we've all gone through these pain points, as a business. Biggest improvements. So initially, when you're starting out, you got one or two people kind of wearing multiple hats, and so you're doing a little bit of everything until you're able to build a brand and be able to attract good talent. And so we've been able to finally build out the right, person in the right seat at the right time, which has been very beneficial for us. For example, my wife is now our COO, and she's like Dina. She cracks the whip, very, very in it. So just having, good leadership has really helped us, project and to grow. And then obviously systems and processes, everything has to be documented across the board. And then, accounting, but I would probably say the liquidity portion is something that I didn't fully comprehend, just understanding, at any moment your draw could come in short. At any moment, the loan could go to the right. At any moment, you're going to need excess to pay somebody. So just having that liquidity, right, is you always overraise, always get as much as you can safely within the deal because you never know when you're going to need it. And then that leads into the last thing, really the mindset is, real new construction, you got to touch it, see it, feel it sometimes, just staring at dirt and trees, it's hard to see it. So do you have the mindset and that mental fortitude to not give up and to see the project through to the end? And maybe you're not getting paid, maybe you're having to wait. And so just going through that a few times kind of hardens you for that process. And, you just never give up. That's at the end of the day. So those are just some of the takeaways over the last few years that just kind of come to mind.
Resourcefulness and relentlessness, man. It doesn't matter what business, what industry. If you are just resourceful and relentless, you'll do all right. Dina, I'm going to go take it over to you. Biggest improvements that you've made over the years in your construction and development.
So I will say, since I've been more involved, we have gotten much more organized.
I was going to say, I know what Christopher's is going to be, getting Dina involved. That's why I didn't go to him.
Christopher is so good at things in the field. I'm not taking that away from him. He's so good at that. But Christopher's also very trusting. So like we used to not be great with contracts, like he trusted the vendors we used all the time. And they'd say, we're going to do this project for 50 grand. And he's like, okay, they're doing HVAC for 50 grand. And for a long time that might work, but like the bigger you get, when you're doing like big projects like this, it just doesn't work anymore. So we've been burned a few times. Or just that. What, Christopher?
More than a few.
So I don't know. I'd say that's about it, and we have a construction manager. So like releasing the reins of that, making sure that he's in charge of getting the AIA contracts, and he's in charge of getting the proof of insurance from all the vendors, and just keeping everybody accountable and in line. And communication is huge. I truly believe that most problems start from a lack of communication. So if you can like head that off from the get-go and make sure you properly communicate, not just with our team, Christopher and I and Don and our CFO, but like with the vendors and like the contracts, making sure those are very delineated and everybody's on the same page. So that's our best change recently.
And whoever you choose as your subs or whoever you're going to use have pre-construction meetings. So if there's different vendors there, everyone knows everybody and knows who they're working with and what's going on, and go over the schedule and things like that. That's important.
How often do you get on a meeting? Every week?
I don't personally, but Don or our superintendents do it.
Yeah. Josh Dixon, anything to add as far as biggest improvements you've made since you started out?
I think opportunity cost, and looking at it from the aspect of, learning to say no, because I've said yes to jobs that I've regretted many times. And so just being like, yes, it's a good job, but the opportunities that I'm going to miss out on these other jobs. And then secondly is staying boring. I always wanted to swing for the fence. And so nowadays I just try to do what I'm really good at, really well, really fast, really efficiently, and then pick up those fun jobs periodically, or those fun developments to keep you a little interested. But the boring is what makes the money. Getting so good and so repetitive that it just becomes second nature. I can build we're building a single family house, and we'll build them in say 90 days, maybe 120 if something goes wrong. And I literally can spend less than 20 hours. And that's me running the whole job by myself. I've got other guys that can come in, but just having guys that know what to look for, management by walking around, as y'all say. Tim says that a lot, just being able to be so ingrained in it that when you walk on, you can say, okay, this is wrong. Y'all fix that, walk off, and then come back and check things out.
Love that. I want to make sure, I'm going to check the chat real quick to see. I want to make sure I answer anybody's questions that were submitted. Otherwise, I have one more fun one that we can wrap up with if we don't see anything in here. The only one I see is, as far as dumpsters are concerned, it looks like Jennifer's kind of already addressed it. Do you have issues with individuals going through your dumpster, and how do you handle it? Jennifer said, yes, they do. And cameras on site make that a little bit better. Anybody have anything other than cameras to add to that before I go to my personal question?
There's not much you can do besides that.
So the question I want to ask, because this is the fun stuff for me, is do you guys get involved in any of the politics and you know, the gamesmanship of going to cities, counties, states, whatever it is, and getting some of the money from them, whether it be tax abatements or grants or anything else? And where have you found success doing that? Christopher Roush is shaking his head. So let's start with you.
Yeah, I hate every one of them. But no, I used to every single one of them. Like there's been developments that took me 2 to 3 years to get through zoning, planning, you know, zoning changes, things like that. And I did every step of it. You know, like even a Starbucks, we just broke ground and I filed for our permit in October 2021, and it was zoned commercial. It's just dealing with the cities that long. But nowadays, I don't do any of it. I hire attorneys, architects, engineers, and usually I'll hire local engineers that's on our side, you know, and they know the market, they know the people, so they go represent us. Like we're doing a site right now, we're under contract, but they're going today, actually, architects and attorneys, and you know, to do it on our behalf as representatives. But sometimes it takes a long time, but when I was broke, I couldn't afford to do that. But today it's worth every penny.
Christopher, Fadi was asking about getting money like from cities and states for grants and tax abatements, such as that. I mean, we are trying right now. I mean, the Racine project, there's money for road infrastructure. I think he's talking more about that.
Oh, see how much I listen?
That's why you keep her around, though.
Yeah. No, we usually we'll do tips and things like that when we're doing developments, you know, normal. But we are trying to get what is it, rural development something. They'll do infrastructure grants if you're providing jobs and things like that. But it's a 2-year process, but we've been working on it forever. But we're trying to get like $2.5 million to do a road into an industrial park on 80 acres to do road and infrastructure just into the property.
Love it. Josh Dixon, what about you?
Yeah, so we're always in some kind of politics. I don't get deep into it, but we sit on the planning committee. We go to planning meetings. We send donuts to all the municipals, all of our suppliers, all of our lawyers, everybody. So we try to network really well. And so we're out with the mayors at lunch, and that network has brought the money to us. So we have one development that we had bought to start multifamily industrial on, and that led from one thing to another, where they brought the state to us. And so the state is offering, you know, to help with roads, to help with getting pad ready. And then, so I think it's more about the network. We don't like go look for the money, but we make the efforts to just keep us in the loop with everybody, on the top of their mind. And then they, in return, hey, yeah, well, let's give them a call and see if we could help them. And we stay in rural areas. I like the dollar store model. They don't get right in the middle of everything, competing with Walmart around home. They want to have one every 5 to 10 miles. So when we're choosing our locations, we're to do stuff, we want to be as close as we can without a lot. We want that low hanging fruit. I guess that's just the easiest way to say it. And so in doing that, staying in front of everybody, then they tend to bring the money to us.
Love that. Yeah, just so everybody is aware, there is money out there. My recommendation would be to start with a Google search of whatever state you're in and economic development grants, tax incentive, abatements. Just Google that stuff. There's going to be, Ohio, for instance, has an entire website dedicated to the different programs that you can apply for. Now, some of them may take 3 months, and so it's feasible, and some of them you're going to take every bit of a couple of years to get it in place, and so it better be a longer term project. But absolutely, there are programs out there, and if you don't know or you're not interested in finding out for yourself, then I highly recommend what Christopher and Dina do, which is hire the people that are smarter than you and have them figure that stuff out for you. And it should more than pay for itself. Whatever you're paying those attorneys, if they're not making you a multiple on what you're paying them, then you find somebody else, right? But it should more than pay for itself. With that said, I want to thank all the panelists for joining us. I think we got a lot of great insights on how to how to push development along, and how to, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been doing it for a long time. I think we kind of established it's a lot of the same basics across all of the different disciplines. So love to see that. Chris Litzler, thank you also for being part of it from the financial side of things. And I think we're ready to roll into our closing here. So thank you everybody for being on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. So with that closed out, I think what I'd like to say, obviously this training is all about development. It's all about construction. Legacy Wealth, we're trying to do a training every Friday from now until our next big event. We had a training last week on raising private money specifically, and previous weeks on all kinds of different topics. So if you have not been able to catch those, make sure that you go back and check them out, as well as with the few that are still coming up, make sure that you check those out, listen in. We're trying to get as much good content from good operators out there as we can. Appreciate the Perkins couple, the Roush couple, Chris Lamb, Josh Dixon, Chris Litzler, everybody for coming out and helping us educate people, give them a little bit of information. I'm a firm believer, thanks to my experience with masterminds, which started about 7 years ago at this point, which is crazy to believe, but I'm a firm believer that the more information you give out for free, the more you will propel yourself as far as business, as far as life, as far as everything is concerned. When Tim invited me out to my first mastermind, it was a pretty interesting interaction back and forth between the two of us, where I basically told him, hell no, I was not going to cut him a check for $2,500 to spend 2 days in a therapy session with him and a couple of people that I've never met. By the time he was done, back and forth, he got me to commit to coming to it based on 2 things. Number one was tickets to a Cavs suite, which was part of the mastermind, which, helped seal the deal. But he also gave me a guarantee that if after day 1, I didn't think it was worth the money, I didn't have to pay for it. And, that's how much he wanted me to be there, and how much he believed that masterminds and the power of masterminds were going to help propel me. And I can honestly say in the last 7 years, I've changed literally everything about my financial life, my work life entirely, and a lot about my personal life, frankly. From everything that I've learned from the people in masterminds, from the power of masterminds, it's literally changed everything for me. So what I would ask from each of you is, when you hear the word mastermind and you don't know what it is, explore a little bit deeper. Find one that is hopefully going to help you change your life and make things better. We have our own mastermind, so I'm obviously very partial to ours, but that doesn't mean that you can't look outside of ours and find one that benefits you, find one that elevates you, and one where you can help elevate the other people inside of that mastermind as well. Because that's what the power of masterminds is. That's what masterminds are all about. Our next mastermind is actually February 28th and 29th in New Orleans. It is generally closed to the public. This is going to be the first time that we allow people that are not members to come for a one-time fee. You're only ever allowed to do this one time. So you can't choose to do this now and then choose to do it again. It is a one-time. We believe so much in the power of masterminds that we believe that if you come out one time, you will see the power and you will believe, and you'll hopefully, whether it's our mastermind or somebody else's, join a mastermind and help elevate your life. I'm going to kick it over to Alyssa to tell you a little bit more about the details on that event, but that event is centered on tax minimalization strategies, harnessing the power of self-directed IRAs, increasing margins. We have various workshops, and Alyssa, if you want to tell them a little bit more about the details, please.
Sure. Thanks, Fadi. I've also got Annalise here. You'll see she just dropped in the chat the link for all the details, where you can register. I'm just going to go ahead and actually share my screen so that you guys can see it as we walk through. And so, yeah, so next summit here is coming up in just 25 days. We do cut off registration a little bit early, so February 6th, so that is coming up here. In terms of what you can expect, it's 2 full days. It is an incredible few days. We've got a few days of speakers, panels, and networking. We've also got some really fun events. It's going to be in New Orleans, so you can see that information here, book your hotel through our link. But in terms of what you can expect from the event, so we've kicked it off with a networking event. We'll have a group ghost tour. We like to incorporate with all the events parts of the city, the culture, really sort of embrace the whole aspect of each city that we go to. As Fadi mentioned, we've got a whole bunch of things lined up. We do a group workout in the morning if you'd like. We've got breakfast, check-in. If it's your first time, we'll pair you with a member just so you can sort of get a feel for what the event has. Last week, we did a whole thing on self-directed accounts and harnessing the power of building wealth through your self-directed account and investing in real estate through there. So we'll have a whole more information detail on that. And then as Fadi mentioned, a keynote speaker with Chris Shakowitz. So he is a leader in tax and getting access to free money through grants, through funds, all those sorts of things. So that will be a key part to turn into. And then we're going to have our own parade in the evening on our way to our dinner location. The next day, day 2. So I like to say, like Fadi said, we're going to do a whole entire financial statement workshop. So bring your P&L. This workshop in itself can help pay for your event in full. You bring your P&L, you find out where to cut 3% in your margins. That pays for the event in itself, plus some. We've got people coming on alternative and passive investments. So things like crypto, other businesses, buying businesses, all those sorts of things. So all about money is this next event, combined with networking, all of those sorts of things. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share here. But if anyone has any questions about it, you guys are more than happy to raise a hand. We can unmute you, answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, while people are raising their hands, I'll just mention that, I've been part of numerous masterminds, still am part of multiple masterminds. Obviously, I'm partial to ours, but I'm still part of other masterminds as well. I've been to almost every event out there, and what I can truly say about our mastermind, other than the quality of people is just top notch, and the evenings, right? Like there's always a little bit of networking somewhere at every event. I don't think anybody goes out of their way to immerse you in the culture of the local city and keep you out having fun until sometimes a little bit too late in the evening. There's no group out there that I've ever been to or event that I've ever been to where such a large portion of the people that attend it stay out together for, literally hours and hours, midnight, sometimes later. Not saying we do that, but we might do that. But yeah, it's such a close-knit group, and it's such a fun group. And one of the big benefits obviously outside of the most important stuff, which is elevating your life, is we also like to have a lot of fun.
Yes. Hey, what's up, Marley? I think you're unmuted, Marley. If you're having audio trouble, maybe you can drop the question in the chat. But also we've got a handful of members too. You guys can reach out to. Obviously everyone that was just on the panel is a member, but I see Bill Phillips, Jason Seward, Corey Jansen just turned his video on. So yeah, there's some members in here too. If we love having all of them on. Eddie, Matt. Let's see. I don't know if Marley was able to get the audio working, but do any current members have any questions about the upcoming event? Bring your P&L.
I want to know what the challenge is going to be this coming time. I know Jason and Bill always come up with a challenge for everybody from one event to the next.
I've already got it. I'm not revealing it, but I already have it in mind, so you'll know soon.
I've got to tell everybody what the current health challenge is.
I've got to finish the current one. I got taken about a month off here. I'm falling behind.
The current is 20. That's from last summit to this summit. You had to do 25,000 reps of push-ups and or air squats. It could be a combination. So that through that period, so you could do them all in one day or incrementally. So, yep. And then the one before that was the step challenge. I don't remember all the numbers there, but you had to have a certain amount of steps in the 3 months between them. So,
yeah, like I said, trying to elevate you, not just from a business perspective, not just from a financial perspective, but hopefully from a health, lifestyle, wealth, because health is wealth at the end of the day. If you don't have your health, the rest ain't worth it.
All right. Yes. Marley, great question. Go ahead, Annalise.
Oh, I was just going to say that she put the question in the chat, but unfortunately we don't have a virtual event. It's just because this is such a critical time for people to use the networking and the in-person events. So this is very exclusive to just being in person.
I will mention, however, that if you are a member of the mastermind, you do have access to view past events. You can go back and watch the video from, I don't know, how far back does it go, from the beginning or just the last few?
All of them.
Wow. So you get to see some of the most fun times, some of the most interesting panels, some of the best speakers, right, that we've had. You can pick and choose which ones you want to watch and which ones you don't. But there's a lot of really great information from prior masterminds or prior summits that you can access. So, huge benefit there too. I mean, with that said, it's noon and I don't see any questions. So I'm going to, out of respect for everybody's time, call it a great end of this virtual training. And I appreciate everybody again for coming on, whether it be the people that came up on the panels and the people that came out and spoke, as well as the people that just came out to listen and be part of it, asking great questions. We appreciate you all being here. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you all in at the end of the month.
Bye, y'all. Thank you, Fadi. Thanks, everyone.